Welcome to the Pretty Powerful Podcast, where powerful women are interviewed every week to share real inspiring stories and incredible insight to help women or anyone break the barriers, be a part of innovation, shatter the glass ceiling, and dominate to the top of their sport, industry, or life's mission. Join us as we celebrate exceptional women and step into our power. And now, here's your host, Angela Gennari.
Hello, and welcome to the Pretty Powerful Podcast. My name is Angela Gennari, and today I'm here with Deb Curtis. How are you, Deb?
I am great, Angela. Nice to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely, my pleasure. So I want to introduce Deb. Deb Curtis is a remarkable woman who has overcome many obstacles in her life and career. In the 1990s, she was told by her company's bosses that they didn't promote women. But Deb didn't take no for an answer. She kept pushing forward, and eventually the all-male leadership team gave her a chance to prove herself. They said she could try being a manager for 6 months. Guess what happened? She did an amazing job. She outperformed all the other managers who were all white men. This incredible achievement earned her well-deserved promotion without the same salary as her male peers. But that was just the beginning of Deb's journey in a business world mostly controlled by men. After a successful career of 30 years, she decided to support other women starting their own businesses. In 2018, she created her very own small business just to do that. Throughout her career, Deb noticed how women and people from different racial and ethnic backgrounds often faced extra challenges. Sorry, I'm tripping over my words. She believes that these diverse individuals bring unique and valuable ideas to the world of business. That's why she works hard to help get them recognition and opportunities they deserve. In partnership with the Small Business Administration, Deb helps those individuals take over and run successful, established small businesses. She's a passionate believer in the power of diversity and is dedicated to changing the way we think about who can own a business. Deb has a special way of connecting with people. She shares honest and professional stories that draw in and inspire everyone who listens. Deb is happily married and a proud mom to 3 daughters and 4 grandchildren. Mm-hmm. That's amazing. So let's dive into this because I love that you talk about diversity and inclusion. Obviously, that's a huge topic for our show, being the Pretty Powerful Podcast, and we are empowering women. But one thing I do want to point out, because we do have a lot of male listeners, is that you don't have to be anti-men to be pro-women. And so that's an important distinction that I like to make, because we're not about not supporting men. We're just saying, hey, we're going to give women a little bit of a step up, because for so long it has been challenging to do that. So just like in your past career, you had a challenge of being able to not being promoted and not being put into a management position until you had to really fight for it. Mm-hmm. So let's kind of start there.
Yeah. I love the fact that you are so cognizant that, as a reminder to your listeners and to our men, including my husband, who I worked with in that company of 18 mm-hmm. years where they wouldn't promote me.
Right.
We're not here to be negative or bash, but we are here to share with everyone that we still have work to do to mm-hmm. Empower women and not allow us to still be dismissed, because
right.
we want to climb. So starting with that first professional career of mine, I can understand why perhaps I wasn't promoted due to the fact that I didn't have a college education on my resume. Okay. And in the 90s, in the 90s, you might remember, Angela, that was very evident. You couldn't even get an interview unless you had a college education. They would just pass you over. And that kind of carried over the next couple of decades thereafter. But today, I think we're a little more lenient about college education. It's more about fire in the belly.
Yeah. Well, and I love because you point that out, and it's so true, because in the 90s, I remember I was in high school and I was going into college, and I remember my mom worked at this warehouse, and they would pass her up time after time after time for promotions, and they kept telling her it's because you don't have a college degree. And so they would bring in a male, typically, who could run the warehouse, and she would have to train them in their job duties, because she knew their job inside and out. She could have done it in her sleep backwards, but because she didn't have a college degree, she couldn't get the promotion. And so they just kept her where she was, even though she had vast more institutional knowledge than anybody that they were bringing into the position. And so she was so adamant that I go to college and I get a degree, because she didn't want me to be limited in the same way, which, oddly enough, I can tell you that, I mean, I'm glad I got my college degree, but I worked my butt off to be, on the dean's list and this great GPA. And do you know how many times I've ever had to show my GPA and that they've cared about my dean's list? 0 times. 0 times.
Right.
And so, I'm glad I got the degree. I'm glad I can check that box. But at the same time, I think that was a particularly challenging time for women if you didn't have a college degree.
And as crazy as it is, I remember a male friend of my husband and I, he fluffed up his resume to say all of that you rightfully worked hard for, but he fluffed it up. And he even admitted it and put positions on his resume that he never really even had.
Wow.
And he got some pretty darn high paying there up there corporate gigs. And we just shook our heads like, this is nuts. And that was in the 90s. So you're right. I promoted college education to my 2 older daughters when I was younger, because I didn't want them to go through what I went through. But it wasn't so much that the position back then in the 90s really needed the college education, but it was something that a lot of employers just put, you must have this.
Yeah. They had to check a box.
But for me, it was a finance company that I was working for, and we repossessed cars. And they didn't want women out in the field doing that, because there were not repo companies back then. We didn't have cell phones in the 90s. We had to make sure we had change in the car. And I would go with my manager at the time, looking for the vehicle that we had to repo, because we were a finance company. Secondary auto finance paper is what we put on the books. And find a local payphone, drop the coins in the payphone, and call your local tow truck guy to come meet you on the corner of such and such. They didn't want women doing that, but I was already doing it. I'm already doing it with my boss, my manager. And so they did okay it. And I'm grateful for that, Amanda, because I didn't have that college education on my resume at the bottom, but that promotion at the top, showing my results over an 18 career, that I managed a team of people and was promoted as a woman. I paved the path for other women to get promoted in that company. And that led me to other avenues within my career as far as promotions. So
yeah. Well, yeah, absolutely. So, it's challenging, because when we're trying to fight for roles, and there's one thing that can hold us back, and it's something like a college degree, or it's a lack of education or a lack of certification in certain areas. It does weigh on us, because there are times in our life, especially if we start having children younger, it's a little bit more challenging to go to college. You have kids to raise, and you kind of have this guilt of, I can't really set my family aside to focus on my education. And so, the younger you start having children, I feel like that can also make an impact on the ability to get a college degree. And I'm not saying it can't happen, because there are definitely so many instances of people who are doing all of it,
Mhm.
single parents or married or whomever, and they're going to college and they're getting it done. But it is much more challenging.
Oof, it sure is.
Yeah.
And, yeah. And I think about the 18 years with that first career. I had my two daughters and went on a very, very, very short-term maternity leave because the benefits for
Yeah.
women that were working in corporate, you just either took it with no pay or saved up
Hmm.
your 2 weeks of vacation and your sick time. And my two oldest girls are a year and a half apart.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So I used up all my time with the first one, Angela. And then when we were
Hmm.
expecting a second time, I came back to work, I kid you not, within a week because I
Mm.
had to, or I didn't get paid.
Yeah.
Isn't that
Wow.
crazy? That's
That's
what we
crazy.
went through that. And
Yeah.
and and I think today men and dads are taking more of the approach, and now there's more benefits. Like my husband works for a
Hmm.
big bank, and they offer the men now today like 16 weeks of pay if they
That's
have a baby.
amazing. That's huge because I think that that's given men the opportunity to come in and contribute to that, because for so long, even if they wanted to, they didn't get any leave. They'd have to take sick days, they'd have to take personal days, but they didn't get any time to spend with their newborn. And so they were missing that ability to create that nurturing connection. And so I think it's wonderful now that companies are doing things like that,
Oh
because I
yeah.
think it really is bringing some balance to the pressure of that newborn phase.
Yes, and I'm hearing the same for women, the mothers too. You don't
Hmm.
have to take it all 16 weeks at once. You can split it up a couple weeks a month because that first year, two
Yeah.
years of bonding with your little one, that's huge for mom and dad.
Yeah.
We've
Yeah.
come a
Well,
long way there, right?
we have, my goodness. Well, and then you have all the doctor's appointments, and you have the sleepless nights, and when you're going through things, it might actually help to have that banked time to go
The
back and take
daycare
another week as
calls.
you need it.
Your daughter
Yeah.
has a fever of
Mm,
100. You got to pick her up right now.
yeah, exactly. So, so talk to me a little bit about your past, because I know that your life mantra is God, grit, and grace, and I
Mhm.
love that so much. So, tell me about where that came from.
It all started when pretty much growing up. I didn't really know. I knew there was a God when I was a little girl because my
Hmm.
parents were married and we were Catholic, and my mom every Sunday would make us all sit in the front pew, and we would get
Mm.
to church early. And Lord have mercy, if we missed that front pew, it was going to be a long Sunday.
Yeah.
So, but I didn't really understand much at the time because I was only 9 years old, but I knew there's something bigger than us. So,
Hmm.
um, and my parents were married young, and then my mom got involved in drugs and in just the wrong set of people, where my parents ended up getting divorced,
Mm.
and then my mom uh, abandoned me, and there were threats along the way where I couldn't tell my father, but my father only had like every other weekend a chance to see me. That's the way
Wow.
the judge had set it up. And over
Hmm.
time, being the youngest of three, my two older sisters were moved out. And then the oldest one would come home. She was in the military locally, and she would come
Hmm.
home on the weekends, and every now and then she would see the house was just going to pot. I could
Mm.
tell you everything that was ugly about it. It's just another sad story of children in our world that perhaps live with parents that have a lot of challenges, and they're growing up in those atmospheres. So over time, my sister finally let my father know what was going on, and I was abruptly given custody to my dad. And then there
Yeah.
was a 2 year court battle for my dad to win custody of me. So by the age of 12, I had to be the one testifying in court against my mom for
Wow.
abandoning me. Yeah. So
That's rough. Yeah.
then, right then and there is when I started to just kind of talk to this bigger something.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
as I got older in life, I often reference I looked for love in all the wrong places, and my
Yeah.
first marriage ended up being to an alcoholic, and
Mm.
that was an ugly story. Domestic abuse. I bailed him out of jail, and that was during the 18 years of that first corporate professional job that I so wanted to be promoted.
Yeah.
And they didn't know anything about what was going on at home because, again, we women put on a facade that
We do.
everything's fine.
Everything's great. Yeah.
I
We
need
can
to get,
handle it,
yeah,
right?
I need to
We
get
think we can handle
promoted.
it.
I need to
Yeah.
get, but you don't know what's going on. I got to
Mm-hmm.
tell you something. I have to share this little sidebar,
Yeah.
Angela, with you. I'm on LinkedIn a lot. That's my social media platform of choice. And
Uh-huh.
I will tell these stories. Either I write them or I'll do a short video. And I told a story about my father and how, and gosh, it was a year ago with Father's Day coming up,
Uh-huh.
about how he rescued me twice when I was abandoned from my mom and then through the domestic abuse with my first husband. It was on Father's Day. Um, so I lost my train of thought there for a minute because I was thinking about my daddy. Where was I
Oh.
going with that,
I don't know.
Angela? Darn, I had a really good message to share. Oh, I'm so sorry, young.
It's okay. It's okay. We'll come back to it. It'll come back.
Yeah,
It'll come back
it
to you.
will. It will.
So when you're going through this, what you're dealing with your mother, how hard was that when you were little? So when you say she abandoned you, were you basically raising yourself at that age and you just were afraid to say anything?
Yes. She was very bipolar,
Mm-hmm.
very threatening,
Mm-hmm.
and I learned at that age. I walked to school,
Yeah.
and I learned to be invited over for friends in the subdivision we lived to be invited for dinner. I just
Mm-hmm.
learned what to do. And then I ended up getting a small cash job cleaning apartments for elderly widowed ladies. The local grocery store recommended me. They're like, there's this nice young lady, maybe she
Oh.
can help. And I would ride my bike and buy their groceries for them and clean their apartments. So I had some cash and I just knew how to make it at that age. She would take off
Mm-hmm.
and she'd always leave me on my dresser a little 8-pack of Hostess donuts and say, I'm going to be gone for a while. Here's some donuts. Remember, don't say anything to your dad. And
Wow.
I couldn't say anything or I would be in trouble. But the funny
Yeah.
thing is I was the only one living in the home.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Well,
I didn't know any better. I
yeah,
just,
at that age, you're very impressionable, and somebody tells
yeah,
you, don't do this or you're going to be in trouble. You don't know what trouble means, right? Like, does this mean I'll
yes,
go to jail? Does this mean she'll go to jail? Does this mean I'll be,
yeah,
beaten? Like, you just don't know.
you don't
And
know.
yeah, and so fear is what really kind of keeps you in that kind of captivity of, I'm not going to say anything. So,
I
and then
do
go
I
ahead.
do remember telling or my dad he would drop me off every other weekend and I would just bawl my eyes out when he pulled out of the driveway, trying to hold it in before he would leave because I didn't want him to
Mm,
know I was
mm-hmm,
upset. But he wouldn't come in the house because it wasn't his house anymore.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yes. But
Yeah.
yeah.
So your dad picking you up was kind of that like safe space of, my dad has me now.
Yeah.
I'm safe for the weekend and then,
Yes.
and then you go back to this other life
Mhm.
where you're having to figure it out on your own at a very young
Yep.
age. So then the impact that has on you, I'm sure when you go into your first relationship, the chaos of alcoholism felt comfortable. That was normal for you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
It just it felt like it. It really did. It just got uglier.
Right,
Uh,
right.
and I
Yeah.
felt responsible for him because if I was the breadwinner, I had the money coming. He couldn't hold a job. And I
Mm-hmm.
didn't want my dad to know either. I hid it from him
Mm-hmm.
as well as
Mm-hmm.
my employer. So what happened, and I'm sure you get this yourself just listening to me, I was abandoned and not loved when I was young. And then basically just dealing with, I was looking for love again in all the wrong places, finding myself people pleasing my way through life.
Right, right. Well, just like with your mother, if you can just do what she says, it won't be as bad, right? And so the same thing with the husband. If I can just do what he says, it won't be as bad. If I just keep it to myself, it will, it'll work itself out. And unfortunately, with alcoholism and abuse, it tends to only get worse. I was in an abusive marriage, my second marriage, and it was one of those things where you start realizing, your brain is tricked into this fear-based learning, right? And so it's like, okay, well, I can't say this, or this will lead to worse things, or the gaslighting and the manipulation. And, you start to think you're crazy, right? Like, I must be the crazy one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so true. It's so true. And I've learned, this is wild, but being a guest on podcasts and going back when people question me, the host, it really triggers a lot out of me that has been buried. And that could be why my mind just like stopped. That might be a trigger mechanism. I don't know. Sure. Maybe it is. That's why I had a default moment earlier here on your show. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen. but that's what happens. Thoughts will come, and the old me wants to just like, don't bring that up and just pound it back down. But it's healing. It's healing for me to be on your show as a guest. So I want to thank you for that, because I'm having more aha moments. I have learned that I always thought I was an extrovert my whole entire life.
Yeah.
And I just turned 56 years of age.
Wow. Well, you look beautiful for 56.
You're a doll.
I mean, you look beautiful for any age, but yes.
Yes. I like to say I'm a cool and hip grandma to my grandchildren. Yeah. They're little babies. But this people pleaser that I should say, retract that. The extrovert that I always thought I was actually the people pleaser in me. I'm really an introvert. That people pleaser came out because I want to make everybody happy. Like, you hear me say I'm sorry a lot. Sorry, that's still in me because of fear of what's going to come at me. Am I going to lose somebody? Right? So I've learned that I really am an introvert that was pretending to be an extrovert with that people-pleasing character. And I'm trying to heal that.
Right.
Still, well, think about it. I mean, Angela, mental illness wasn't talked about until recently. I mean, in the 90s and decades after, if my employer found out that I was seeing somebody just to talk to because of my rough childhood and first marriage, I got a target on my back.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, because they would think that you're not stable, right? You're unstable. Even though now, like, you're applauded for going to therapy. Like, in the dating world, if somebody had a traumatic childhood and they hadn't gone to therapy, they're not dateable. They're not dateable until they figure themselves out.
Yeah.
But
right?
Because we all have things that we need to work through. And it's just that vulnerability that allows you to start healing. And if you're not willing to be vulnerable and transparent and really just put it all out on the table, then healing cannot happen, right? So the first step is acknowledging that there's a problem. The second step is taking action to solve the problem. And I want to bring up something that you said. You had said that you apologize a lot. So I recently gave a keynote speech for women, for executive women. It was about how to stand in your power and 15 tips to stand in your power. And that was one of them. Stop over apologizing. Every time you over apologize, you give your power away. So, instead of saying, I'm sorry, say thank you. So I'm sorry for being late. Thank you for waiting. Right. So stop saying I'm sorry, because what we do is we put ourselves in a vulnerable position of weakness, and we allow the other person to take the power of, being the righteous one. So, we want to make sure that we're asking for grace, not mercy. And so that's another tip, is just, ask for grace. Don't ask for mercy. I'm not asking you, because when you ask for mercy, you're saying you are more powerful than me and you have the ability to destroy me, and I'm asking that you don't. And in grace, it's I'm equally as powerful. I made a mistake as you make mistakes, and let's just see eye to eye that this is gonna, we can get through this. And so, grace over mercy, and power over apologies. And I'm not saying people should not apologize. I think that there's power in the apology itself. But when we over apologize for existing as women, and we do this all the time, we're constantly apologizing. We're constantly in that weakness state.
Yeah.
We give our power away pretty quickly. So so stand in your power. Don't apologize to me. You don't owe me anything.
I'm learning still at 56, and I think I'll always be learning.
We're always learning. Every single one of us. We are all a great big work in progress.
Yeah. I do want to share with you that my mom, who abandoned me, she did miss a good 50 years of my life.
Wow.
Yeah. And March of 2020, when the pandemic hit, she called me, living in a one-bedroom efficiency drug home, but not doing drugs. She's 76 at that time. Now she's 80. And we had to move her in temporarily with us, my husband and my children. And she's bipolar. She was adopted. She's had a rough life. She has polio, a curvature of the spine. And there's a lot of reasons why she was into drugs and alcohol for her own past. She was given up when she was a baby because of the polio, and they just left her on a fire station stair when she was a baby. So that's something you see in the movies that really happened in Chicago for her. So she never had a family, and she abandoned me for that long, and we took her in, and it wasn't easy because I had to learn, how do I do this? But here's the beauty in it all. I forgave her, and we have a relationship today, and I'm so grateful.
Yeah.
So similar to you saying, there's power in not saying I'm sorry, right? Saying, as you mentioned, give me grace, right?
Yeah, grace.
Forgiveness sets you free.
It really does. Absolutely does. Yeah. Well, and sometimes you don't get apologies, do you? So sometimes, the person may be sorry, but they just won't say, I'm sorry. And so it's forgiving them despite the apology, despite that, and so it's like, I didn't get it, but I'm still, for you, I'm going to forgive me. I'm going to forgive you. For me, I'm going to forgive you.
That's exactly it. I mean, she never once said, I'm sorry. And I don't know really what was going on in her mind and in her eyes and in her past. I have assumptions and ideas, but we can't do that. But the good news is she's part of the grandchildren,
That's good.
greats. And so there's some beauty behind that journey, which
absolutely is so the part of that I want to talk about is God, so you talk about grace and mercy, and we talk about, forgiveness, and obviously this goes back to religion, and like you, I had a very transactional relationship with God when I was younger. I would pray for things to be okay. I pray I could get home safely, because I was walking home late at night from practice, and I needed to get home, and my mom worked all the time. So like she was working. So I was kind of raising myself too, and not because she had abandoned, she was just working 3 jobs, and I just, it was just what it was. So I would just pray constantly, but it wasn't because I really understood religion. It was a transactional thing for me at that time. And it wasn't until I got to be an adult that I really developed my faith. So tell me how your faith developed in that and everything that you were going through.
Yeah, that's where I think I had that pause. So as I mentioned, it started with as a child, the Catholic Church, and then the first husband. We didn't go to a church, but because that first marriage was so difficult with the domestic abuse, I
Mm-hmm.
started to pray hard and probably more transactional, like you, like big time
Yeah.
transactional. I'm like, okay, now if you really are who you say
Right.
you are,
Right.
you got to
Right.
help me because I married this man and that was a vow for better or for worse. It doesn't get any worse than this, at least for me.
Right.
This
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
my life on the line. And when the police department says they're not coming back to our apartment because I won't learn my lesson that I need to leave, this is my life.
Mm.
So I prayed more to him, but wasn't going to a church. And finally, after 3 attempts of leaving him, my dad, who rescued me from my mom, rescued me from my first husband, and got me out of the situation with police and my big old Uncle Joe, who's still alive
Mm-hmm.
today. And he's my favorite Uncle Joe. Every woman out there needs an Uncle Joe. I'm going to tell you
Uh-huh.
right now. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then that 18-year job that I was working at, one of the men that I had beat with performance just went through a divorce and recognized I was going through a divorce. And he asked me out, but I on a date, and I turned him down several times. And finally, I agreed. It was Valentine's. I agreed. And
Mm-hmm.
that is my husband today, 30 years later to that.
Wow. Wow.
And before he started to date me, he was a very big Christian,
Really?
faithful man. Yes. Went to church all the time. And if we were going to pursue our relationship in the early days, it was a must that I was born again and believed in
Yeah.
God. And he would, he wasn't like this, put it all in your face, but that
Yeah.
I do believe that there is a God and I have a relationship. So I did, because I prayed all those years for God to help me and for God to bless me with a family
Mm-hmm.
that I never had as a child and that I never had with my first marriage. And when I say a family, just some type of a normalcy,
Yeah.
not abandonment, not domestic abuse. That's not normal. A normal family. And it took years, but God answered my prayer
Mm-hmm.
with that man in that 18-year first employment job. And here we are 30 years later, and God's still blessing me. I have 4 baby grandchildren, all under 3, and 2 more are on the way come fall.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
yeah, so that's where my faith finally locked in, and we were going to several large churches. We
Mm-hmm.
still have our faith. We still go to church. I sing on worship teams. I love God. He really helped me. That's why my sign says God, grit, and grace.
Mm-hmm.
He really helped me get through all of those times, and that relationship grew greater with him. And
Right.
he blessed me
Yeah.
with my husband that I have today.
Well, and what's wonderful is that a lot of times putting your faith in something outside of you and your family and, what you've known and looking at things from a different perspective allows you to break the cycle. So break the cycle of abuse, of abandonment, of alcoholism, of, all the things that you had dealt with throughout your life. And you learned what love was from toxicity, having your faith outside of, people
Yeah.
allows you to break a cycle, because when you realize that what grace does in your life and forgiveness does in your life, and you put your faith in something bigger than what one fallible human can do, then that's when we're able to finally break cycles.
Yeah, I like
Hmm.
that. That sounds really.
So, how has your faith shaped your mentoring of women and people of color and the minority population? How has that shaped how you mentor?
Yes. First and foremost, I am very public about my faith, just regarding my stories.
Hmm.
There are so many stories that I share when the time is right, even if it's a similar story, because my clients and other women will share their stories with me, and when I can connect with them and tell them what I've been through, it kind of brings us together. And I believe that God sends me the people that I should be working with.
Yeah.
I really do. You know, these are people that that do love God,
Hmm.
and there have been clients that were like me, curious about Him, and sometimes uh, the road to acquire a business with financing, it's not easy. It's not like a very one application you're done. It takes time and a lot of
Hmm.
patience. And I've had clients that knew I was stronger in my faith than perhaps they were, and they've become stronger through the process, where I always tell them, you just got to have faith. Just
Yeah.
have some peace, say a prayer, God is faithful. And
Yeah.
they like it, they listen, but then when they really need it, then they'll tell me, oh yeah, this time I listened and I prayed. And
Yeah.
yeah, so um, I will teach that to my clients based on just my testimonies. I'm not a preacher by any means, but
Hmm.
I am. I can say I'm a sinner, because we all are, but
Right.
but I'm forgiven, and
Hmm.
that's really the message. And I want my clients to know that I carry honesty, integrity, and full transparency, because
Hmm.
I want to go to bed at night with a prayer and
Hmm.
sleep sound, that I remained who God made me to be, and
That's right.
not somebody else, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
That'll get you in trouble.
Oh, absolutely. I agree. So tell me what obstacles you've had to overcome in your journey, because I know you worked at one company for 18 years, and I know what those obstacles look like. But when you decided to go out on your own and you started your own small business, what kind of obstacles did you encounter when you're starting your own business?
Yes, and I'm still encountering them.
Uh-huh.
I chose I chose my business to be in the same industry that obviously I know from corporate America. I always was in small business banking and small business lending,
Uh-huh.
SBA lending. I always supported small businesses. So I have grown to really love and appreciate small business owners. Through those experiences, I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Mm-hmm.
And over time, uh, as an SBA lender, there's several different credit requests. You can ask for a loan to start up, brand new, ground up startup. You can ask for working capital for a loan from a
Right.
bank that does SBA lending. But then there was this transaction called, you can acquire an established money making business that's
Mm-hmm.
selling today. And I found over time, Angela, that the business acquisition transactions, loan requests, had a better ratio of approval because they were just stronger.
Profitable.
Yeah, there was
Yeah.
already money there day
Yeah.
one versus
Yeah.
a startup. So, through corporate, it was a very male dominated industry. And then business brokers, when I was working in corporate, that's a very strong male dominated industry. And what I realized in corporate was, not only was it internally very male dominated, externally as well. And what I mean by that, the applicant that was applying to purchase, finance, and establish business, the majority of the applicants have been white men.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a reason for that, just because historically they've been the breadwinner. Historically, they are the ones that have been working over the decades. They are the ones that have been promoted, right?
Mm-hmm.
The majority of a lot of industries are run by male managers in the past. So those are the ones today still that are acquiring small businesses. And as a female trying to navigate working with business brokers, wasn't always easy.
Mm-hmm.
Some, I don't want to say all, some just didn't give me the credibility just because I was a woman, and it was odd for a woman SBA lender to be calling them to work with them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then I also noticed that even on the several different teams at various employers that I worked with, the majority of my peers were men, and they also, some would cherry pick, so to speak, who they wanted to work with. If a woman called, or maybe a certain minority demographic would call for a business loan or to buy a business, sometimes they wouldn't even call these people back. And we're talking women. So I recognized that, okay, I need to do something here. I need to split off on my own when that time comes, and support women. I'm diverse. My business is diverse. I will help everybody, but I have a passion to support women and people of color to help them find a way to acquire these businesses and become the small business owner, versus just what is the norm, which is our white men that have come from corporate, from promotions. So that's my story. I established my business in 2018 on a part-time basis, just kind of easing my way into it. And now I have been fully fledged at it on a full-time basis. I help out men, I help out women, I help out everyone. But my passion and voice on shows like this and in webinars is to educate women. Number one, women, and then all gender and all backgrounds, for fair and equal opportunity. We have to do better. And I'm not blaming the men. It's just that we need to do better. I want to see our government come up with some kind of an education program for women and maybe all other minority populations to learn how to purchase, finance these established businesses, because 11,000 baby boomers are retiring a day.
Yeah.
And that's going to continue for the next 5 years. We call this the silver tsunami. It's the greatest wealth transfer in our country ever.
Wow.
Because we're all living longer. And out of that silver tsunami are baby boomers that are selling their 20-year profitable businesses, and SBA will do the financing. That's what I do for my buyers. So I want to level the playing field, if I may, to allow more opportunities for women and the minority population.
So if somebody's looking to buy a business, what do you suggest they look for in a business?
Yeah. My suggestion is, first and foremost, talk with a business acquisition specialist or an SBA lender, but make sure that the SBA lender has experience with these transactions, because they're very complicated. The typical norm, if you Google up, how do I buy a business? Google will tell you, go talk to a business broker, but the business broker represents the seller. So I don't find that a good place to start. I look at it like a first-time home buyer. Would you just, if you wanted to purchase, finance a house, would you just go to all the open houses and pick your favorite one? Because you're going to pick the one that you can't afford. So the same applies to being a first-time business owner. Talk with your lender, or talk with the business acquisition specialist like myself. Find out how much would you qualify for? Because
Hmm.
businesses sell for 250,000 up to 5 million and higher.
Yeah.
And the SBA will finance the small and the big, large companies like that. So talk with the lender first, find out what you qualify for. In
Hmm.
addition, the lender should be looking at your resume to kind of see, what industries do you have experience in? Do you know how to manage people? Do you have a love
Right.
for people? As a business owner, you got to have some kind of love for people,
Hmm.
managing personalities, right? People first. And then once you have an idea that you qualify for this certain dollar amount and these various industries that you're interested in that match with your experience, then we go to market to find the business that qualifies for SBA financing, because the business cash flow based on the tax returns, that's what the underwriter is looking at to make the payment for your purchase finance transaction.
Right.
Yeah. And again, the business brokers will tell you everything great about that business because they're going to make an income when they sell it. But your
Hmm.
lender, your acquisition specialist is on your side, and they know what's going to qualify with the SBA underwriting process. So that I highly recommend start with representation on your side,
Hmm.
and zone in on what you qualify for. Otherwise you're going to be shopping for the wrong stuff and be told a ton of stuff from brokers that it's the best sliced bread and the loaf that's on the market.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, I think it's important that everybody do their due diligence no matter what, because
yeah.
whether you're buying a house or a business or, a car, you need to do your due diligence and do the
Mhm.
background, because it's kind of buyer beware. You don't want to get 2 years into your business and realize that, there was some significant issue that should have come up but
Yeah.
didn't. And now you're dealing with repercussions of that.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. Do you think today, I mean, I know my husband does, just like small business service businesses. I made the mistake last fall, and we have a new fireplace we put into our home. So
uh-huh.
I just called as a woman, a local small business, to order some firewood. And they told me the price and they said they would deliver it on Monday. And I thought, this is great. I can't wait. And then my husband came home the same day that I ordered it.
Yeah.
What did you pay for it? That's the first thing he asked. What did you pay for it? And I told
Yeah.
him. He goes, that's bullshit. So what does he do? He calls
Uh-huh.
them and they drop the price way down. I'm like,
Wow.
so why is that still happening? I mean, this was just last fall. And I'm like, my husband's always like, don't call for it anymore. Let me handle that
Yeah.
stuff. I'm like, really? I'm like, but why? Why does it have to be that way? I just,
Well, so I think that there's two ways to think about it. Number one, I think there are some people who will always try to take advantage, right? So whether
yeah,
it's a woman answering the phone or an elderly person, or,
true,
my son is 16 years old and he owns his own business, and he has challenges with people taking him seriously or giving him a good price on things. Now,
okay,
he's a very savvy 16-year-old. He's owned his own business for 3 years now. So
that's
I mean,
great.
he's a smart kid, but I will usually go behind him and make sure that whatever pricing he got was fair. But I am also a big believer in negotiating. And I think women can be absolutely the best negotiators because we're a little bit more disarming. They're not expecting it to come from us. But anytime I used to negotiate for cars, I'm actually the person most people will call that are, my ex-husband, my mother. They'll call me to come negotiate their cars because
I love it.
I will negotiate. And it can be disarming, but I think that the better negotiator you are,
Yeah,
and kind of, you can be disarming with it. You don't have to go in there and strong arm them, but you can be strategic and strategic negotiating is very important. And so, and with negotiation, I feel like everybody wants something out of it, right? And so as long as you can figure out what do they want, right? They
Mhm.
want to make a sale, but what is it that you want? You want the firewood. And so it's like, how can you give them what they want, but you get what you want at the best price? And they may give up something like, hey, how much would it be if I picked it up? Because maybe they just didn't feel like, maybe they didn't have a driver that day, and they'll
That
give you a
could be.
great price if you just come pick it up. And
Yeah.
so it could be just something similar where find the way to find the angle. I used to say everything is negotiable.
Yeah.
Or go into a mattress store and I'm usually going to walk out paying half of what they have listed. So
That's great.
everything is
Man, my
negotiable.
husband would get along with you really well. He's the negotiator. Everybody that needs a car calls my husband to
Mm-hmm.
do all that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I
But I think
guess,
there's power in it. I think there's power in asking good questions. So, like, I think it all comes down to the questions that you ask. And I always say, if you want a great answer, ask a great question. And so, if you can go in and ask really good questions about and find out exactly what their motivations are, then you can negotiate pretty well.
yeah, good for you. That's that's great.
Hmm.
I love your strength,
Oh,
Angela. It's,
thank you.
you
I
know, I could, if I could have a third of it, I would stand tall.
Well, thanks. I think this comes from my mother who,
Yeah.
like you, I was left to kind of do a lot of it on my own. And again, it wasn't because she was doing anything out of malice. She just
Uh,
always had to work. My father had not been around. And so he chose to leave when I was 2. And so
yeah.
left three, two
Wow.
little girls and a mom to figure it all out. So we did,
Mm.
and we're tougher for it, but
And
we haven't done everything right, that's for sure.
what,
So what advice would you give to your 18-year-old self?
oh boy, that's a good one. Ah, oh boy. I'm there's a lot going through my mind right now.
Mm-hmm.
You need to believe in yourself
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and um, take action sooner on something that doesn't feel right.
Oh yeah, that's really great advice.
Yeah, because like you said earlier in the show here, you just want it all to work out,
Yeah.
and sometimes it's not gonna. And
Mm-hmm.
recognize that sooner than later, whether that's in your personal life or in your professional life, your corporate career, even if it's a business, if it's not working out. Some of the best business owners today failed probably 3 times prior.
Mm-hmm. Yep, so
But you know
true.
what the key was? They recognized it sooner and got
Mm-hmm.
out.
Yeah.
Because we all
Yeah.
get start overs, right?
Uh-huh. All the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's what we do as women. We give people the benefit of the doubt, but we do that too much. We sometimes you just can't do that. Sometimes you just have to see things for what they are. Mm-hmm.
You're looking right at her.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
So as women, we give our power away all the time, and this is one of the things that I talk about on the show. So in what instance do you feel like you gave your power away? And I mean, I know that we've done it a million times, whether it's giving somebody credit or allowing them to take our, voice away or whatever that is.
Yeah.
Tell me about a time that you gave your power away and another time where you stepped into your power.
Yeah. I gave my power away in corporate America too many times
Mm-hmm.
simply by quitting.
Yeah.
And that's giving away your power because things just weren't going right. You were passed over for that promotion. You just, there's several reasons why. And you just quit and you just, you know, crybaby about it. And I quit too many times. So I gave my power away. And I should
Yeah.
have stood up with those hands on my hips and or said, let's talk about this, right? I don't like what's happening. It's not fair, but let's talk about this. Um, so the last corporate stop of mine, I didn't give up that power. I didn't quit.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't give up my power. And it was very evident. The HR department was well aware and even admitted in writing to me that there was disparate treatment, and it was unfair to me as the only female on the team. Yet
Mm-hmm.
again,
Mm-hmm.
it happened with the first job, but they promoted me, so they did it the right way. The final job, it didn't work out that way. I didn't quit. Um, I did seek counsel and received help through that process, and I have to give him a lot of credit because his words to me were, "Don't quit." You don't know how
Mm-hmm.
many times I wanted to quit. I hung
Yeah.
in there as long as I could and left on my terms.
Good for you. Good for
Yes.
you. That's awesome. So, so tell me, what do you wish more people knew?
I wish more people knew, especially women, that there are opportunities out there for them that they need to take advantage of. And they
Mm-hmm.
don't have to continue to work in corporate, or they can continue and work in corporate by acquiring a small business.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing to me, Angela, that so many just don't even know that this is an option.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I wish our country would do a better job at educating women and minorities. Our men know, but even some of the men don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know. We have to do better with our education, whatever
Mm-hmm.
that is. And here I am, the one preaching earlier. I didn't have the college degree. I'm talking about education as in opportunities. You know, what we should be watching that on the news at night. There should be stories about these great baby boomer businesses, small businesses, the heartbeat of America. You know, the companies that give to your son's baseball league team, they
Mm-hmm.
give back to the community.
Yeah.
We should be talking about that. There's this big turnover and transition, and they need new owners, and women are great at managing people, you know,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
and they can move in and transition in to own these companies. Um, if I would have known what I know today, I probably would have a little portfolio of 3 to 4 businesses
Yeah.
with the SBA.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Well, and you can even do this as, you can own you can work in a full-time position and then still go own a small business. And so,
sure can.
that's something that people don't really realize. They think it's
Right.
all or nothing. And you really can do both. It's challenging. You're going to sink some time into it, but at the same time, I think it's doable.
Yes, it
And
is.
I think that entrepreneurship is the greatest pathway to wealth in the country, and the opportunities that our country provides are amazing, but they're just not talked about. And that was part of the reason that I even started the Pretty Powerful podcast, because I didn't feel growing up. No, I grew up in an inner city area. I grew up with a single mom who worked all the time. But I did not hear about opportunities in entrepreneurship. I didn't hear about,
Right.
franchising and small businesses. And that was just not part of the conversation. And then even as I became an adult and I started my first business when I was 23, really didn't know what I was doing. I just it was a default, by accident business,
Mhm.
but I started it. And then I just didn't know what I didn't know, right? So you make all these mistakes, and I would go to men, and men weren't always the best resource for me. Now I've been very, very blessed. I have some really incredible male mentors in my life, and I'm very, very grateful for them. But it wasn't always working out, and I didn't have women to go to. And so, when your conversations with your friends, right, as a woman, I call it the bus stop conversations, the one that you have when your kids are little and you're waiting at the bus stop and the
Yeah.
moms are all there and they talk about, what is little Johnny doing this summer for vacation, and what sports are your kids playing, and what's going on, with the HOA and the,
Yeah.
oh, the
Right.
bus driver's going to retire and the
Yeah.
teachers are this. And it's almost like you're afraid to say anything about like, hey, I'm going through some things with my business and I'd love to talk about it. You're afraid to say that because you feel like, you're so far in left field from where the typical mom conversations go that you're like, I'm going to lose them, right? I'm going to lose friends because I'm going to be the outlier. And so you're afraid to bring it up in the bus stop conversations, but it's on your mind and you're like, I need to be able to vet some thoughts. And, but having a safe space to do that is challenging as a woman. Because it's not our natural conversation, right? Our natural conversation is kids, school, teachers, community, and husbands, but we're not talking about finance and business and loans. And, we're not talking about that. And we should be, and this is where we can elevate the conversation and why, I want to feature women like you who are out there doing great things for women and helping them to see what the opportunities are.
Yeah, that's wonderful what you all just said, because I think of me doing what I'm doing in an all male industry. Sometimes these brokers, when I talk to them, they're like, who is this girl?
Yeah.
they're not used to it. They don't believe in me. I feel that too. Like, does she really know what she's talking about? Listen, I'm not a know-it-all, but I know enough to do what I'm doing for my clients because I did it for 20 years in corporate. That you can't learn in school. They don't teach you how to purchase, finance, and establish business at college universities. They just don't. You learn it as you go. So I believe we're coming around the mountain, though, Angela. There are more women business brokers and more women. We're coming around the mountain.
For sure. I agree.
Yeah.
Well, this has been such a pleasure, Deb. I've really enjoyed talking with you. So tell me, how can our audience find you?
Oh, sure. My website is my name, debcurtis.com. And my email is deb@debcurtis.com. My favorite social media platform of choice is on LinkedIn, but all my social channels, my handle is at Deb Jojo Curtis. My middle name is Jo, J-O, so it's Deb Jojo Curtis. The grandkids call me Jojo instead of Grandma because Jojo just sounds better.
Well, it's a cool name. So yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Deb. You've been such a pleasure to talk to. I've really enjoyed our conversation today. And everyone can see us on the prettypowerfulpodcast.com. And if you go to prettypowerfulpodcast.com, you can also see Deb's links will be on there as well. So you can always reach out. So thank you again for your time today. I've truly enjoyed it. And I wish you nothing but incredible success.
And thank you likewise, Angela. Take
care.
All
right. Bye, guys. Have an amazing day.
Thank you for joining our guests on the Pretty Powerful Podcast. And we hope you've gained new insight and learned from exceptional women. Remember to subscribe or check out this and all episodes on prettypowerfulpodcast.com. Visit us next time. And until then, step into your own power.